I think there's an equal amount of necessity of mission mode on nuclear education, nuclear safety education, so that people understand why we need nuclear electricity. Largely, with climate change concerns and electricity requirement, we can't do without nuclear energy.
You're on the gist on Strategies Global. I'm Surya Gangadharan, and my guest on this edition is Manpreet Sethi, a scholar on nuclear issues. She's a researcher and writer on these issues. And we're going to talk to her about recent announcements by the finance minister regarding India's nuclear program. Manpreet, welcome. Glad to have you again after a fairly long break.
Thank you very much, Surya. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Tell me, you would have read and known about the finance minister's address, where she talked about 111, 110 gigawatts of nuclear power by 2047. Now, I know the atomic energy goals have been kind of revised and re-revised many times. How doable is the new target?
So, Surya, I see this announcement with a sense of cautious optimism. I think they are trying to inject energy back into the nuclear domain, and there are several reasons for doing that. But the ambitious goals do look a bit ambitious. We are currently, I think, as everyone knows, at about 8 gigawatt of electricity from nuclear, just at a little over 8 gigawatt right now. And to think that we would get to 22,000 megawatt by 2031 and then to 100 gigawatts by 2047 does look ambitious. Some of these targets which have been set in the past haven't been met. I hope the government has a plan in mind as to how it's going to get to this, because every time we set these targets and we don't meet them, it does bring skepticism to the nuclear field. And that's something that we can do without, given that nuclear energy is such an important part of India's energy mix and will only become more important as we go into the future.
So what has been holding us back? Is it the state control? What is it?
No, in fact, I would say there are several sort of circumstances that developed in such a manner that has held India's program from, living up to its potential. As you know, we were the second Asian country to actually start operating a nuclear power plant in the 1960s. And then in 1974, when we conducted the peaceful nuclear explosion, all of the cooperation that we were getting was stopped. India is not a member of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, made it impossible for India to participate in international nuclear commerce. And then finally, when we did get the agreement in 2008 to circumvent all of this international regimes that were stymieing our program, Fukushima happened in 2011. So I remember when we were tracking this program between 2008, when the deal was signed, and 2011, there were as many as 12 MOUs that India had signed. There was a lot of optimism about new nuclear parks that would come up, American participation in our program, the French reactors, South Korean reactors. In various states, parks had been identified. And then when Fukushima happened, it dampened the Indian spirit on nuclear energy because of public skepticism and fears about the safety of nuclear energy. Unfortunate circumstances within the country and outside have held us back. We also passed the liability law in 2010. And, while we were sort of influenced by what had happened in the Bhopal gas tragedy, and therefore liability was made as strict as possible so that people would get compensation, but we ended up creating more problems for the private industry that wanted to be involved. And so there are many factors that have held the Indian program back for various reasons.
So what do you think they'll do now with the liability law? What are the changes you think are necessary to, kickstart the broader nuclear mission?
So the basic problem with the liability law that was put forth by the private industry was that it was putting the liability on the supplier. Worldwide, the norm is that it's the nuclear operator who takes liability. And if it's the supplier, then obviously the private industry that was going to be part of the supply chain had a lot of fear about what this would mean. And this was like lifetime liability for them on the equipment or material or component that they would provide to the nuclear operator. Even though the government did come up with a press statement thereafter to explain that this would not happen, but because it was part of the law, the industry wasn't convinced. And that is what has been the biggest problem. I think what is going to change is that the operator will take liability for any accident. And as you know, this is a business or an industry that pays a lot of attention to safety in order to
Yeah.
rule out the possibility of an accident. But liability is important again to convince people that things have been thought through.
Politically, quite a walk back, isn't it, from that stand? I
Yes,
mean,
because the present government was in opposition at that time and did call for an extremely stringent liability law. But I think circumstances have brought this wisdom that you can't create that kind of a law and still hope that there would be a vibrant business here.
mhm. Let's come to the other point of small modular reactors or the Bharat small reactor. There's an issue of technology, isn't it? Big
So the
issue of
small
technology for us.
Yeah, so the small modular reactor, as you can see, is supposed to be small. So it's supposed to be less than 300 megawatt. And also, it's supposed to be modular, which would mean that there would be a design which has then been given to the industry who can produce several modules of these reactors and provide them. So they say that it will become like a product rather than a
Mhm.
project. You are not sort of building it on the ground, you're just bringing something, installing it there, and it's
Mhm.
good to go. Yeah, but worldwide, there are about 60, 70 designs of SMRs that are being experimented with, that are on the table, except for Russia, which has a floating nuclear power plant, which is a small modular reactor. No other country, China is on its way, but no other country has yet started operating a small modular reactor or even constructing one. So yes, we are a distance away from seeing the operationalization of small modular reactors, but there is a certain amount of buzz around this. There is a feeling that there are several advantages that SMRs will bring, particularly cutting down cost. The gestation period will not be long, so your costs will be low. The time taken would be much lesser. There would be ease of siting them. There will be flexibility in how you can add modules to this, and that they would bring economies of scale. But these economies of scale will come when you standardize on a design, and
Yeah.
many modules of the same design can be put forth. So I find the supply chain maturity still quite distant. In the case of India, as per the statement of the government, there are, I think, 5 designs that they want to operationalize by 2033. Again, I see it with a lot of caution, because it's not all that easy. There are several safety, security, liability, regulatory issues around SMRs which haven't been resolved. So yes, given that we have an experience with our 220 megawatt reactors, which are technically small reactors,
Yeah.
then they
Yeah.
haven't been modularly built. But will we be
Mhm.
able to leverage anything there to be able to build these SMRs remains to be seen.
Mhm. So again, we'll have to go look outside for technology collaborations of some kind.
Yeah, there is a lot of talk about possibility of collaborations because all countries are at the same sort of level on this right now. So it might be a
Mhm.
good idea to do some collaborations on newer designs which are safer and more secure. But I also want to sort of sound a bit of caution on SMRs being able to solve our electricity problem.
Mhm.
Because if we need rapid electricity generation, and with India's make in India, the manufacturing sector which has traditionally been small, the idea is that that manufacturing sector will now grow. If that grows, electricity requirement is going to be larger, and for that electricity requirement, we still need larger capacity reactors. SMRs could be useful in remote areas as captive power plants for industries like cement or steel, which need a lot of electricity. They could be good for repurposing some of the old coal plants which have been sort of decommissioned, and you want to use that infrastructure for SMRs. But SMRs for solving our electricity problem, the requirement that we have, I don't think SMRs will be the answer for that. We still need larger capacity reactors, and that's why you've seen there is again a talk, and especially if the liability law changes, then getting to the US, Westinghouse setting up 6 reactors of 1200 megawatts. That's where you would, leapfrog into larger, larger generation of electricity.
Manpreet, there is one point I'd like to flag. There have been issues with the Jetapur plant, the location, the site, and all that. Apparently, people don't want it there. And when we look at these Westinghouse deal and all that, I mean, do people actually want these reactors in their vicinity? I mean, is there public acceptance of such reactors?
So, Surya, as you know, public acceptance has been the biggest issue, and after Fukushima, that really sort of exacerbated.
Yeah.
Over the years, the Department of Atomic Energy, through its public relations division, etc., has tried to do a lot of outreach to get people to understand the safety aspects of nuclear power. In the case of Jaitapur, I think land acquisition, yes, it did face problem, but that has been gotten over.
Mhm.
Environmental reports have been undertaken, baseline studies have been done, and I think the people have largely been sort of won over. In Jaitapur, the biggest problem has been price negotiations with the French on the nuclear reactors, because the cost, compared to the Indian nuclear reactors, has been much more. And
Mhm.
that's where the negotiations have been stuck for the longest time. Meanwhile, the French nuclear industry itself has gone into a churn. There was a lot of consolidation that happened from the private to the
Yeah.
government. I mean, that's stabilized now, and one hopes that Jaitapur will see the light of day. But it's been in the making for now 20 years without construction having started.
Mhm. In your assessment, do you think we'll end up going back to the Russians?
The Russians certainly, I mean, we already have 4 reactors up and running at Kudankulam.
Yeah.
Two more are being constructed, and there's talk about 2 more. So you would have those 8 reactors in Kudankulam
Mhm.
producing 1,000 megawatt electricity. So yes, I mean, Russia does remain, one of the major sort of bigger reactor players in India. Also, I see possibilities of Russian collaboration for Indian nuclear exports, as we've done in Bangladesh. Right now, we were
Yeah.
only involved in the non-nuclear component, but there is potential for India to join hands for financing and fuel from outside, and designs and experience from India, and make it possible for nuclear exports to happen from India.
I recall maybe a year or two ago, there was a decision to build reactors in fleet mode. That was the term used. And I recall Dr. Kakurkar mentioning that India has now stabilized and focused on these 700 megawatt reactors that are indigenous. Um, is this how we are going forward, focusing on 700 megawatt reactors?
Yes, so before the liability law, the talk had started about the change of liability law and possibility of, international collaboration on this front picking up once again.
Yeah.
The idea was that India would put our 700 megawatt reactors into fleet mode production. As you know, I think there are 10 reactors that are currently in different
Yeah.
stages of construction, which are 700 megawatt, and that's the highest that India has indigenously designed capacity
Mhm.
of a reactor. So yes, they are being constructed in fleet mode. You also remember the minister then saying that we'll see 1 reactor become operational every year.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so they are at different stages, but I do think that that will be the sort of the biggest aspect of our program going forward till we can get, for instance, the things sorted out with the French or the Americans.
Is the target being met, one reactor a year? I think they recently commissioned two reactors somewhere.
Yeah, at different stages of construction.
Yeah.
I think operational, no, we've not seen one last year, but
Mm.
hopefully it will pick up because there was some issue with the 700 megawatt, the first of which was to be operationalized. So once that's become okay, I think the others will be faster in coming online.
The problem may be a lack of players in the field, isn't it? You only got one big agency, NPCIL, to build reactors. So is that the market expanding now?
Yeah, in terms of providing equipment, components, etc., the private industry is participating in a big way. NPCIL remains the main constructor and operator,
Yeah.
but the private industry is very much a player in our nuclear program now. I think the confidence on both sides is growing. The private industry needs predictability. So when the government said that 10 reactors will come up in a fleet mode, there is that predictability that comes to the private industry. The more they are providing to the nuclear power program of ours, the greater is the comfort level that is growing on both sides. So I think there is potential here that we will see blossom in the coming times.
So in that sense, the two targets mentioned for small reactors and for 100 gigawatts, that's part of this entire plan to encourage private industry to come in.
Yes, yes, that's the idea that it will be in partnership with the private players.
Mhm.
So,
So the atomic energy department becomes will be transferring technology in the manner in which ISRO is doing to private startups.
yes, there is some talk about it, but I think there will be mindsets to change before that kind of a thing can happen. We do realize that with nuclear technology, you are dealing with serious stuff here. So there
Absolutely.
are problems of safety, there are problems of security, there are problems of proliferation. You don't want any of this to happen because it will just mar the entire program. So, if there is any possibility of giving designs that have been sort of perfected by the DAE and provided to the private players, I think uh, the mindsets on all sides will have to change about how you're going to deal with a situation like this. What will be the role that the Atomic Energy Regulatory Board, IAEA safeguards, how is all that going to be implemented when it's a private operator? It has been done elsewhere in the world. There might be models to sort of study and take best practices from, but it's a new path that we might be setting ourselves off on. And while the minister says nuclear energy mission and they want to sort of come to this in the mission mode, I think there's an equal amount of necessity of mission mode on nuclear education, nuclear safety education, so that people understand why we need nuclear electricity. Largely, with climate change concerns and electricity requirement, we can't do without nuclear energy. Renewable energies can only take us that far. So, for a base load source of electricity, nuclear energy is important. People have to be educated about this and about the safety dimensions, but in a simple manner. Because the more technical we get, then we lose
Yeah.
people's interest and attention. So, therefore, I think we need this dimension also in mission mode to be able to live up to the targets that we've set for ourselves.
Also, is there enough uranium currently available to cater to this enormous expansion that we are looking at?
I don't see, I mean, uranium will be that much of a problem. We have built strategic reserves for the 10 reactors that we had decided on. We do have fuel available. Recently, there was a report that in the Jadugura mines, new discoveries have been made. So, prospecting, which had not been taking place in mission mode because
Mhm.
of again public concerns, etc. I think that kind of uranium prospecting within the country will be necessary to open up new mines. Besides, of course, the international market is now available to us for buying
Yeah.
uranium. And since there is a bit of a lull in the international market, particularly because of the sanctions on Russia, which has been the biggest supplier of uranium
Mhm.
in the commerce sector. Perhaps that's an opportunity that we should make use of to get and build our strategic reserves on this.
And do you think our thorium reserves will now come into play?
Not yet. For that, we have to wait for our fast breeder reactor, the prototype
Mm.
fast breeder reactor to become operational, more FBRs to be set up and become operational, and then we'll get to our third stage of the cycle, which will be thorium utilization. However, I must mention some of the designs of small modular reactors are looking at the possibility of thorium utilization. So, without
Okay.
going through the three stages to get to thorium utilization,
Yeah,
there could
yeah.
be some designs that might come up from there. The Department of Atomic Energy certainly has designs on paper and on the table that they are working with, and this is one that has been spoken about.
Mhm. You think, last question, you think there'll be more willingness now for world, nuclear players to collaborate with India to come here? You think the stage has been set for that now?
I think so. I think the nuclear market in India is certainly seen to be very lucrative, and
Yeah.
international players who don't have so many opportunities elsewhere, particularly in the US, for instance, where there's a plateau on construction of new nuclear power plants. There
Yeah.
is certainly an energy in India that is visible to the others. We'll have to be cautious in terms of our price, dimensions, as well as our safety and security with the designs that we are getting in from outside. But given the experience that we already have in the nuclear field, I think there is a huge amount of potential. And that's why I said I'm looking at this with cautious optimism. As long as we play our cards right, I think things could change.
Fingers crossed. Manpreet, thanks very much as always. A lot of insight on these issues from you. Thank you very much and look forward to this conversation at some future favorable date.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
That's all we have for you on this broadcast. Do subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on social media. Thank you very much. Good day.